Peace and blessings. How y'all doing? This is King Kevin Dorival. I know it's been a while since I made a video on YouTube. Actually, it's been a couple of months now, But I have moved to Atlanta, Georgia. If you guys didn't know, from Fort Lauderdale. Now I'm in Atlanta, so GA is my new home. I'm loving it. Everything has been flowing supernaturally. The accelerated pace. So many great things has happened. I think from being here for the past 60 days, I've had one blemish, an issue, so that's a whole nother story. But today, I want you guys to focus on what I'm about to tell you about what does God mean to me, where does the concept of God comes from, and why we worship and praise God the way we do in churches, whether you're Catholic or Christian, or you might even be non-religious, but you still have the concept of God in your heart and in your mind and your spirit, which is very important. Now, some of you may not like what I'm about to say, but I'm going to go straight to the point. Now, those of you who understand Christian theology, Christian theology is based on, Jesus being the Son of God and coming back from the dead. But then again, if you rewind some thousands of years before, you have Haru, which is where the concept of God comes from. Haru is the son of Aset and Nasar. She had the Immaculate Conception. The same thing how Mary gave birth to Jesus. Same thing with Aset, Queen Aset gave birth to Haru, and he rised again. And that's pretty much where the story of Jesus and Mary and Joseph comes from. It comes from ancient African mythology about the original Trinity, which is the mother, father, and the child, which many say the son. In Christianity we call it mother, not even mother, but father, the Holy Ghost, and something else. But it's definitely not the same Trinity that it originally came from. Why am I saying this? Many of us depend on the Bible. The Bible is the source of everything. The Bible is everything. It's the end all be all, which really is not the case, because the Bible wasn't written to be taken literally because man wrote it. When I grew up, and just to be real with you all, I'm not trying to get thousands of views and make this controversial video so people that are Catholics and Christians hate me, because I have a Christian background, Baptist background, which makes my life very interesting, that there's a paradox. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because growing up, I couldn't ask any questions. I couldn't ask, where does Jesus come from, or miracles. I can ask questions about miracles, which is miracles are very real. I've had a few miracles myself, but you couldn't ask those questions without being slapped, and that's because our parents were taught what their parents were taught and what their parents were taught, and so on and so forth. So even though it could be, or it could be a myth, it could be a lie, it could be the truth, it doesn't matter, because in our parents' mind, this is what we were taught, this is what you were taught, this is what you're going to pass down to your children's children. And so I grew up not really trusting the Bible, because I didn't trust man. I didn't trust men. I didn't trust people. I had a trust issue because of the things that, I experienced or seen my mother experience in the hands of other men. So how can I trust a man that is not God? How can I trust a man who wrote this beautifully written book with all these stories in it, but I'm supposed to trust in what was written by man? So it took me a long time to get over that. But over time of going to church for dozens of years, a couple of decades, I began to accept the Bible as my truth. I still read the Bible every now and then, but I've come to understand that the Bible was not meant to be taken literally, for word, because if we took the Bible for word, we would not only do the sins that are, the sins in the Bible, we also do the goodness in the Bible, which really, when you go to church, they want you to do what's good, the good things written in the Bible. But there's a lot of horror stories written in the Bible as well. The time where I believe David No, Saul. Saul was sent to go. Saul was under the tutelage. I'm sorry, David was under the tutelage of Saul, and so Saul was sent, to annihilate this whole kingdom. And he saved. I believe he saved the king. He saved a couple of people from, the annihilation. And so God sees that as sin, and next thing you know, he was moved out the way. He was destroyed so that David could take over. King David. There's many other stories of, all kind of crazy mental torment. What's the word I'm looking for? Demented stories that are in the Bible. And there's also a lot of miracles in the Bible. Jesus raising up from the dead. You have the story of Mary getting pregnant without the semen being placed in her with Joseph. An angel got her pregnant, the Holy Ghost. You have the story of Moses parting the Red Sea, which is a very interesting story as well. Being that I've always found that story to be the greatest story in the Bible. There is no greater story than that story, But as I've grown older, I'm like, okay, so if the sea was parted, you have these hundreds of people walking through the ocean, the Red Sea, someone would have recorded that. There is no recording of the parting of the Red Sea. That's one of the greatest miracles of all time. Outside of that miracle, where Joshua stopped the sun, in the middle of a battle, he was able to stop the sun, because if the sun was to set, then his enemies would have gotten away and they would have lost the war. So God allowed him to have more time to pursue the enemy by pointing to the sun and stopping the sun. That in itself is powerful. That's another story that's not recorded or written anywhere outside of the Bible. And so a lot of times, like I got to mention Dr. Boris Shango, who's a big influencer in many of my work in his spirit. I wrote my second book. Where is that? Seven Types of Queen, King Desire. His book, African Woman, Original Guardian Angel, was a big influence on that book. Now, this book, The Courage to Believe, which is my first book, Inspirational Autobiography, I wrote this. A lot of my thoughts on Christianity and spirituality has made a big transition, so from here to here, my mindset has changed, because these two books were written about 5 years apart, and so in this one, you're looking at me as a Christian. I was going to church twice a week, faithfully, religiously, twice a week. And this book, I was still going to church, but towards the end, I kind of slowed down going to church from maybe, once a week to maybe twice a month to maybe once a month to sometimes not even no times a month. Because I realized a lot of the things that I do, and the people who look like me, beautiful black brothers and sisters, melanated brothers and sisters, we go to church and we celebrate all these holidays because that's what was expected of us, that was enforced upon us. And just like our parents forced us to go to church, it's the same way that our ancestors, whether they were in the slave plantations of America, the colonies, or in the Caribbean. I'm Haitian, so I know a lot about the slave history of Haiti, slave history of places like Jamaica, Brazil, definitely the slave Atlantic trade that happened, of course, in Africa. And so these religious thoughts and ideals are actually enforced. They were like, we were mutilated, violated, raped, beaten to death to believe in the Bible, and also to believe in the white Jesus, that Jesus is going to save us all. This mythological white Jesus was going to save us. Now, there's two different Jesuses. There's a mythological Jesus and there's a historical Jesus. Now, what we've been taught in our churches is a mythological Jesus. And what we really need to study is the historical Jesus. And so if Jesus being a man, how can a man live his whole life and not have sex one time you have all these women around you? You know what I'm saying? That's not being real, you know, because a man has needs, not that he's going to jump to his physical desires and urges just because there's women around him, but a woman is going to find you attractive. You're going to find that woman attractive, and you guys are going to mesh and make love and procreate, which is one man, one woman together under God, making one union. Two worlds merging together. That's what life is about. Now, the power of God comes into play when we understand who we are. Not who they tell us that we are, but we must understand who we are as the African people. We have to understand our purpose in this world and what did our ancestors do back then. How can we improve it now so our children could make it even better in the future? Because if we don't invest right now in learning from the mistakes and also the successes of our ancestors, we are either blessed or cursed to repeat it. And that's vitally important. And I made this video because I see a lot of people don't really believe in God. You know what I'm saying? I'm watching social media, the bashing churches, the bashing Jesus, not really understanding the fact that Jesus is real, just not this white mythological Jesus. Is definitely something that was imposed on us so that we can depend on the white man or woman, the white supremacy for everything. So whenever there's a white man comes into play, a white person comes into play, everything's going to be in order. Now we got a leader. No, we have the strength. We are the first ones. We are the creators. We are the innovators that created the United States. And matter of fact, the whole world depends on Africa. Right now as we speak, that's power. But if we don't have the mindset and our spirit will not act upon the powers that God has bestowed upon us, we have the power to make the change. But if we don't understand that God is us, we are living gods on earth. Our ancestors in Kemet, which is ancient Egypt, our ancestors in Benin, you know, in West Africa, which is where a lot of Haitians come from. They had the understanding that God was in everything. The Spirit of God was in everything. So therefore, they not necessarily worship the trees and the ocean, but they gave reverence. They respected. You know, even back to respect. Our ancestors respected the woman. We revered the black woman as a goddess because it's the woman that we come from, you know. So that story in the Bible that, you know, woman came from the rib of Adam, come on, you know that goes against the nature of God. Now, if you guys have any questions or comments, I would love to hear your thoughts on that, because the natural order of things is that a man and woman and man gets together, man places seed inside the woman, she blossoms, 9 months later, baby comes out. So how can a man give birth? A man cannot give birth. So these types of things that have been placed upon us has our minds backwards, because the Bible, it wasn't necessarily stating literally that a woman, that Eve came out of Adam. That's what it's saying, but that's not, I really don't believe that's what it was meant or actually even happened, regardless of what we say, because the Bible was forced upon us. What is the meeting of Constantinople? A long time ago. I don't remember the dates, but you know, you have to know the dates if you're a true historian. I'm not a true historian. I just know that I read a lot. You know, right now we're in my library. But the meeting in Constantinople, they decided at this meeting, Council of Nicaea, they decided at this meeting that everyone was going to abide by the Bible. Everyone was going to go by this book, the Bible, and anybody had a problem with it, off with your head. Because this is how we're going to get people in control. So things like the Bible, the media, you know, social media, the news, the school systems, they all play part of this system to get everyone to fall in line. And so those who don't fall in line, they get wiped out, you know. And I'm not saying for everybody there's some disorder, you know, create chaos and mayhem. No, we need order. But just be mindful that the more they inundate us with this BS of, you know, this white Jesus, or, you know, white supremacy is everything, we won't survive without it, the more backwards we're going to be. How can Africa, this is a question I'm going to pose to you guys, how can Africa be the richest country in the world but viewed as the poorest country in the world? The whole continent of Africa, what is there, like 54 countries in all of beautiful motherland of Africa? 54 countries, but they're seen as the poorest continent in the world. How can that be? When our computers, this video camera that I'm using, cars, our cell phones, I mean, you name it, all kind of weapons and spaceships and airplanes, you know, they depend on a material called coltan. You know what I'm saying? They depend on that, and without it, the world wouldn't even function. You know, majority of the world's gold and diamonds come out of Africa, but it's viewed as the poorest continent in the world. You know why? Because they have to have our minds backwards. You know, Dr. Amos Wilson speaks on that. Dr. Frances Cress Welsing speaks on that heavily in her book, The ISIS Papers. And Dr. Amos Wilson, you can follow so many of his videos on YouTube or his books. And he just explains how this whole game is played upon us, and we just go along with it. We just keep going along with it. And we need to stop that because it's actually destroying us. We must stop going by what the system is teaching us, and we must get together because the survival of our people depends on us in this generation. This is the information age, right? There's so much information out there. So much misinformation out there, miseducation out there. We need to start educating so that we can understand the beautiful things that our African ancestors were able to accomplish. You know, I'm not just talking about those in Africa, but those who were enslaved here into America. You know, you get Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, Booker T. Washington, W.B. Du Bois, De Sabla, you know, Toussaint Louverture, Queen Nzinga, Queen Aset, Queen Nefertari, I mean, Queen Tai, you know, it's endless, you know. There's so much history that we can actually read that was real. I'm not saying throw away the Bible now, because the Bible is actually about African people written by non-African people. You understand what I'm saying? They used our stories like everything else, steal it from us, because we are the innovators, we are the creators, we are the gods and goddesses on earth. That's who we are. I'm not saying to throw away the Bible. Read it. There's messages, there's wisdom in it. There's wisdom in the Bible. And there's words. Just like in every book, there's words. Words create the world. The books that we read just aren't there. Language that we speak just isn't here, just so we can speak and just to communicate. Words transcends information. Information is transcended through words. Knowledge, wisdom, traditions, all those things come from words. The words that we speak. The words that we speak are powerful. That's what makes the Bible so powerful and believable, because they're the words. It's the written words. Because when you actually write down your goals, did you know you increase your chances of success by 1,000%? 1,000%. Just by writing down your goals. So I write down my goals because I believe that I will achieve. Therefore, I will accomplish what I am sent out to do. Now, to leave this video, I want to write a few things down, but I'm going to wait. So I'm going to read a few things to you. And I also want you guys to think for a second. You know, I know some of you guys probably got turned away from this video, and I'd love to hear some of your comments. I'd love to hear, you know, your thoughts on what I just said regarding the Bible, the history, and how it's all mind control. Because the longer we keep remaining in this brainwashed state of mind, the more divided we will continue to be. And that's the problem. There's too much division amongst us. But once you read about our ancestors, once you read about how they was able to economically put our money together, so we, you know what I'm saying? Because in economics isn't just money. Economics is relationships, it's trust. There was trust. There were economics before money was ever involved. You understand what I'm saying? So I want you to think about that. But the words we speak creates our future. So whatever we're speaking, whatever you're reading and we're speaking, we're magnifying it. Those who are same faith, as long as we're together, with the same faith, the same ideas, and we come to an understanding and we're praying about it. We have a meeting of the minds. 300 billion brain cells. When you get with a mate, a friend, or your wife, or your girlfriend, or your boyfriend, or husband, and you two have the same faith, you have the same understanding, same meeting of the minds. Your brain cells are connecting. Now you're activating the power of God. It's, even in the Bible it says when 2 or 3 come in agreement, God is in the midst. Understand? Now listen, I'm going to read something from Genesis, and I'm going to, the very beginning of Genesis, actually the first 2-3 paragraphs talks about what God said, and then what happens once God said that. So long as we allow, and if we continue to allow white supremacy to control what we say, control what we think about with our 300 billion brain cells, we're going to remain in the same situation that we're in today. You see the backwardness right now on social media and on the news. You see what's going on with our young men and women. So we have to put a stop to that. How do we do that? About the things that we are speaking, not when they're teenagers. Booker T. Washington, Frederick Douglass. It says it's easier to raise a boy to be a strong man than to fix a broken man. Because you can't fix a broken man, because he's like a tree that's already standing strong. Whether it's sideways or forward, if it's not standing up straight, because he was not guided as a young boy, as a little plant. And so those words we speak are like water. The words we speak is like water to our spirits. And so the continue speaking blessings and encouragement and edifying one another, and we will see that our worlds would change. Now let me read this. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was formless and empty, and darkness covered the deep waters. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw that light was good. Then he separated the light from the darkness. God called light day and the darkness night. And the evening passed and morning came, marking the first day. Then God said, "Let there be a space between the waters to separate the waters of the heavens and the waters of the earth." And that is what happened. God made this space to separate the waters of the earth from the waters of the heavens. God called the space sky. And evening passed and morning came, marking the second day. Then God said, "Let the waters beneath the sky flow together in one place, so dry ground may appear." And that is what happened. God called the dry ground land and the water sea. And God saw that this was good. And God said, "Let the land sprout with vegetation, every sort of seed-bearing plant, the trees that grow seed-bearing fruit. These seeds would then produce the kinds of plants and trees which they came." And that is what happened. You see what I'm saying? And I didn't even do that on purpose. You see how God works? I'm speaking the Bible, and I'm talking about how what we say is like water to our spirits, and then which raises, water to our spirits, and we grow either straight or crooked as a plant into a tree, and boom, he's talking about the plants and the trees. God called it. What are you going to call God? Goddess? My name is King Kevin Dorival. I'd love to hear your comments. Please, no holds barred. I have thick skin. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And also, if you was wondering about the people I mentioned in their books, I mentioned Dr. Boris Shango, African woman, original garden angel, which is a big influence on my book, 7 Types of Queens, King Desire. I mentioned Dr. Amos Wilson, wrote a book, Black on Black Violence, Black Self-Alienation in Service of White Domination. And he wrote The Blueprint of Black Power, Falsification of African Consciousness. He wrote so many books. You gotta check them out. And also Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, she wrote a book, ISIS Papers, which is an incredible book. I have a copy of that as well. And so definitely, hit me up. My website, KevinDorival.com. That's www.KevinDorival.com. Or hit me up on Instagram, Facebook, at Courage Number 2, belief. So that's courage to believe. I'm King Kevin Dorival, and thank you for watching.